Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we have a bit of a longer comment or question from online YouTube, who instead of reading the whole thing, sorry about that, though you can pause and read it for yourself if you'd like, but they were basically asking about world building and saying that Andor perhaps has the best world building in all of Star Wars. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to, well, go into what I think world building is exactly, or what makes for good world building, as well as to, yes, answer the question at the end of the comment about what production rivals Andor from Star Wars in terms of world building. And honestly, I don't know that anything quite rivals Andor's world building in the rest of Star Wars, or at least when it comes to the shows and movies. And I know that's quite a bold claim, and I'm certainly not saying other Star Wars hasn't done a fantastic job of world building too. I think George Lucas is obviously an extremely imaginative person and has created some incredible worlds and cultures that have gone a long, long way in making this far, far away galaxy feel like a real place. There are many reasons why Star Wars worked initially and why it has endured for almost 50 years, and one of them is simply because of the world building. It is a unique, interesting place, and it feels real and makes you want to know more about that galaxy. I actually think A New Hope in particular, and I know you mentioned some in your question there, but I think A New Hope in particular, the opening on Tatooine, is the best world building maybe in the OT or all of Star Wars, all of Lucas Star Wars, I mean, where we see how Luke and his aunt and uncle, how they live, how hard of a life it seems to be to live on a desert planet where you literally have to suck water out of the air to survive, where Jawas pick up and sell, in a sense, trash or junk that you need because options are very, very limited, where there are sand people and other creatures, no doubt. We see the bones of a great dragon for crying out loud, but there are sand people and other creatures roaming about who could attack you at any given moment. And we also know they need Luke to stick around for the coming harvest because, well, it's hard, difficult work, I'm sure. And Uncle Owen being this sort of hardened and very blunt or direct individual because, well, because he doesn't have time and patience for the BS because of his hard life. All of that combined does an amazing job of making Tatooine feel like a very real and rather hostile world because the people are reacting and adapting or adjusting to their surroundings. They are being impacted and shaped by the world as it is. Just look at something like Dune for another really, really good example of incredible world building, where every drop of water on Arrakis is precious because of how rare it is, and then how Fremen culture has essentially evolved because of that, and now completely revolves around it, because it almost has to, considering the significance of it. Furthermore, there's spice on their planet, which everyone in the galaxy wants, and so others coming for it has also shaped how they live or who they are. They have adopted a sort of warrior culture to defend their world and their way of life. Then there's the giant frickin' worms, which, yeah, no surprise, they have also affected the way they live and have been integrated into their way of life and culture as well. And that's what good world building is, or how it works, or what actually sells it. It all needs to be connected. It needs to be kind of circular because of the world being this particular way or having these characteristics or traits or creatures upon it. It forces the people that live there to be a certain way and to develop a culture around all of that or that suits them because of the world. And then these people and or their culture or way of life will have an impact upon the planet itself to some degree, or at least on their immediate surroundings, which then goes back and further affects the people and so on and just keeps going. I mean, you can come up with the coolest idea ever for a world or setting or whatever it might be for a story you want to tell, or maybe you play D&D or some type of other tabletop RPG and you want to make up your own world for players to explore. But if you can't make the people or whoever or whatever inhabits it, if you can't make them feel like an organic and natural part of the world, like everything makes sense, or like, of course, these people or beings are like this, just look at the world around them. They have to be like this. If you can't do that, then it doesn't matter how cool of an idea or setting you have, because it's just going to feel like a backdrop and not like a real place, or like it could logically exist, because it has a little to no bearing on how people actually live or how they act or what they do, which, as we know in the world in which we live, makes no sense. You can go to different parts of our world and see people living drastically different because of the environment in which they live. And I think Ferrix in Andor is a perfect example of doing it right and doing it very well. And mind you, yes, we're talking about a show which had the time to slow down and fully explore their culture. Time movies often don't exactly have, especially Star Wars films, which traditionally have moved at a rather brisk pace. Again, I am not trying to take anything away from George Lucas here and his world building efforts or his world building skills. They're fantastic. But anyway, we can look at Ferrix, which initially doesn't look to be the most hospitable planet ever. We don't see a lot of green or indications that things grow particularly well here. Thus, we see a lot of heavy industry, not a lot of farming or anything like that. We see that they salvage large old ships and that it's likely the main business and what every other business, large or small, sort of has to revolve around or cater to on this planet. And because of this, what's almost certainly very hard and dirty, difficult work, we see a lot of rather hardened looking blue collar type individuals who again work very hard for a living and likely have an appreciation for the things they have because they have earned them with their pretty much literal blood, sweat, and tears. There's also then this very strong sense of community, again, in large part because they all share something in common, the reliance on this one industry that keeps their planet or economy afloat, and the fact that it's a hard job that everyone you work with has to do their part, or you're not going to be very happy with them, and thus you build a strong sense of teamwork. It's also probably dangerous work, so you have to look out for others on the job, which brings you even closer to your coworkers, knowing that they rely on you and you are relying on them to stay alive, potentially. And that all then gets reflected in the feel of the people because this is what the planet is all about. This is what it has essentially made them or molded them into, whether they like it or not, whether they realize it or not. They are a product of their environment, and again, they impact the environment around them as well. It is circular. And since they are very salt of the earth type people, you could say, who feel a strong sense of, again, community, they will look out and risk a lot for their own. Like when the security agency shows up in the first couple episodes, and they're looking for Cassian, and almost the whole city causes a distraction by ringing all these, well, they're not exactly bells, but they're banging their metal contraptions together to intimidate all these agents looking for Cassian to sort of run interference for him. They also bake themselves into bricks when they die and literally become the foundation of their community because of this strong connection to each other, to where they live and their way of life, and because they built this all themselves. And again, they work very hard. They work with their hands. They are very physical people. And that is reflected in, again, them being a literal part of the buildings around them. And since we can understand them so well because of the way they're presented, because it is circular, that here we have a planet this way, and thus the people are this way, and they have this impact on the planet around them, but we are able to easily understand them. We can appreciate them and relate to them on a very human level. Even if we don't necessarily live the exact same kind of life, we can understand the kind of life they live. We might even know somebody, or we ourselves might even live like they do. And so when the Empire comes and messes with them, when they have the audacity to bully these very good, hard-working people who care so much for their world, their way of life, and for each other, we root for them and despise the Empire even more than we already did. Which, as I always say, is one of the greatest parts of Andor, that it gives us this sort of ground-up, average, everyday person view of the Empire. We get to see, feel, and understand why the average person in the Star Wars galaxy not only hates them, but why they would ultimately fight back. We come to have a far better understanding of the rebellion thanks to this show and thanks to, yeah, the amazing world building that goes with it. That is the foundation of it. Because the people in it feel real. They feel just like you and me might in the same situation. And again, that is why we root for them. It is really the world building that makes the show, that makes the story all work. And it is, in my opinion, maybe the best world building we see in all of Star Wars. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below and tell me what you think about this. Is Andor the best world building in Star Wars? Or maybe not. Am I being a little too bold here? Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor," ask a question, and I'll try to answer it in a future video. But whatever the case may be, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.